Good afternoon, everybody. Happy holidays. We are going to move right into some introductions here. I think Kenny's going to start us off.
Yeah, thank you, Tammy. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kenny Tolbert, and I'm an expert rater at Bradford Barthel, where I work with our presenter, Tim. We review MMI reports of any specialty, and we can provide a detailed analysis with our expertise of the AMA guides. Obviously, benefit projections and COLA can be a really tricky thing, but I think you're in good hands today, as Tim is very experienced with this stuff, and he has very keen insights. And so I think I'm now going to pass it off to him.
Thanks, Tim. I'm Tim Musak. I'm housed out of the Sacramento office of Bradford Barthel. I've been with them since 2008, doing ratings full time, benefit valuations. That's what we do in this little group of ours. My background is in claims. I'm not an attorney. I'm a old time claims person and a full time rater now. And here we go. We're going to talk about COLA and the annual checkup, because checks might go up to the injured worker that are receiving lifetime benefits. So we're going to talk about how to apply COLA and lifetime benefits. Before I go any further, I just want to show, Tammy mentioned our dollar charts will be updated and sent out soon. That's how they look. And we go through, we have permanent disability. There's no changes for 2025 in permanent disabilities. There will be changes for 2025 in temporary disability, and there will be changes. There's an updated COLA, which we're going to talk about today. So we're going to cover that stuff today. So I'm done with that, and I'm going to go back to this. Tammy may have talked about this. Certificates will be sent via email. So just make sure that you're registered properly. Follow the instructions for registering. Those can get out to you pretty quickly. This is our team, and here we go. COLA and commutations. COLA in California for workers' compensation, cost of living adjustment, and it's based on state average weekly wage changes. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. COLA applies by labor code to lifetime benefits and commutations, because that tells us what the benefit will be in any reduction for attorney fees and how we apply that. We're going to talk a little bit about the theory and application of COLA and how to apply it to lifetime benefits. And a piece of that is we're going to talk about attorney fees, specifically reductions from future benefits, specifically from lifetime benefits, because if we're paying attorney fees on a life pension or perm total case, they're being deducted over time. That lump sum payment now is being deducted over time from future benefits, and the commutation is how that is calculated. The DU has commutation templates that are used for that. And so there's a reduction, a weekly reduction from future benefits that we need to talk about, needs to be applied to lifetime benefits if there's an attorney or if there's any lump sum payment of advance benefits. So because of that, because those come through commutations, we're going to give a brief introduction on how to. We're not going to learn about commutations specifically. We do have a separate webinar on that on our website if you're interested in that and want more information on commutations at this time. But I'm sure we'll do another one at some point. So the cost of living adjustment summary. The state average weekly wage is calculated by the U.S. Department of Labor. They calculate average weekly wage for each and every state, and it's reported for the first quarter is what we use in California for workers' compensation. So what we do in California is the first quarter state average weekly wage is compared against the first quarter state average weekly wage from the prior year. If there's a change, then that calculated change rate becomes our COLA. If there is no change, then there will be no COLA change to benefits. If it's a negative state average weekly wage change, if it went down as it did last year, there will be no COLA, no cost of living adjustment. We don't reduce benefits in California. So we don't reduce temporary disability year over year. We don't reduce life pension benefits or perm total benefits. They will stay the same as they did last year. But if there's a reduction, those will increase. And again, as we had last year, there was no change. There was a reduction in the state average weekly wage, and so we had no changes. So what COLA does affect directly is it affects maximum and minimum average weekly earnings or wages and the resultant TTD rates, because those are 2/3 of average weekly earnings. It impacts death benefits indirectly. We don't apply COLA directly to death benefits, but there may be some reason why COLA might change death benefits, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. It's specifically because of Labor Code 4661.5, sometimes called the 2-year rule. I'm going to talk about that more later. COLA applies absolutely to lifetime benefits, PD of 70% or more, so the life pension if it's up to 99%, or perm total if it's 100%. Permanent disability. Labor Code 4659 says it applies on January 1st of the year after the beginning of that lifetime benefit. So it's not accruing before it starts, but once it starts, that very next January 1st, it applies, and every January 1st after that. This law came into effect for dates of injury 1/1/2003 and later. So if the date of injury was prior to 2003, COLA does not apply ever on that. So you don't have to worry about calculating COLA and how to increase benefits for that. It does not apply. That labor code did not come into effect until injuries of 2003 or later. So COLA, state average weekly wage, the DIR, DWC sends out a newsline every year after they calculate what it's going to be, and they send it out to all interested parties. This year it was sent out October 16th, and the DWC announces temporary total disability rates for 2025. And they explain what they're doing, where they get that, the statistics from the U.S. Department of Labor. They are matching the first quarter of this year to the first quarter of the prior year, and the change is calculated. And in this case, the increase was $62 a week, which was calculated as a 3.77588% increase. And so that's our COLA, 3.77588% is our COLA for 2025. So what do we do with that? What we do with that is the DWC also recalculates our maximum and minimum TTD rates for 2025. That same level of increase, 3.77588%, is applied to maximum and minimum earnings and the resultant rates. So that COLA is increasing TTD benefits for 2025. So date of injury of 1/1/2025, there's new maximum and minimums that need to be reviewed. And I've seen a question come up. I'm going to answer this one. We'll get to it anyway. But yes, if we paid life pension starting December 31st, COLA applies January 1st, the very next day. It's ever the January 1st. It doesn't have to wait a year, doesn't have to wait any period of time. Once it starts, that next January 1st is when COLA applies to that lifetime benefit. So COLA, from our state average weekly wage changes our TTD rates. We did not have an increase last year. You've got one next year. So 2025, double check maximum earnings and minimum earnings. It could make a difference. So here's our history, a brief history of what state average weekly wage and COLA was. As you can see, it can change. 2022 in particular, we had a huge increase, 13.5% COLA increase. That really increased benefits quite a bit. 2024, we had a decrease in wages. And as a result, we did not change temporary disability benefits. We did not apply COLA to lifetime benefits because there was no increase. And for 2025 now, we have the 3.77588% based on that increase of state average weekly wage. So that's how it's calculated. It changed from year to year, and that percentage change is our COLA. So absolutely, TTD benefits are affected directly by any change in COLA. If it goes up, TTD rates go up, and it directly changes lifetime benefits after they've started. It's going to increase by 3.77588%. Any lifetime or firm total benefits that have started by December 31st of this year are going up January 1st. Again, with the caveat that it's date of injury 1/1/2003 and later. TTD rate, I see Kenny might have another question for me.
Yeah, the clarifying question. If a settlement includes life pension, but the life pension doesn't start until 2030, then does COLA not apply until January 1st, 2031?
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah. Yeah. So it's when that benefit actually should start to accrue. Not when the determination is made that there will be life pension, but when that benefit actually starts to accrue.
And then maybe another question regarding, let's see if I can find it. Where did it go? Oh, it looks like it's already been answered, so never mind. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, I'll ask it here. Regarding COLA on an 80% PD award, can the attorneys agree for no COLA increases?
And I don't know why they would. I suppose you could agree to anything, but getting a judge to award that, I think, I don't see how that could be to the benefit of the injured worker, and I don't see that a judge would approve that.
All right.
Doesn't mean that it can happen, but I would see that as extremely unlikely. Okay. Okay. Thanks, Kenny. So the TTD rate is capped by average weekly earnings, 2/3 of average weekly earnings. So whatever the injured worker is, we still need to know TTD rate based on average weekly earnings. It's 2/3 of the average weekly earnings. The TTD benefits. So by TTD rates going up for 2025, something you may need to look at is older cases where TD is being paid. The 2-year rule, labor code 4661.5, says that TD benefits paid, not accrued, but paid 2 years after the date of injury are subject to the maximum and minimum earnings at the time of the payment. So if you have somebody that maybe you denied the case, maybe denied temporary disability, 2 years later, you're awarded TD, it's paid at the rate that would apply during the year it's paid, at the time it's paid. Again, subject to average weekly earnings of that particular injured worker, but it's based on maximum and minimums at the time it's paid. So if earnings were more than the maximum or near the minimum on the date of injury, a TD rate adjustment could apply onto a 2-year-old case. And that's not January 1st is not a magic date for the 2-year rule. That's 2 years from the date of injury. Labor Code 4656 allows 240 weeks for some injury. So it's possible that you are paying TTD benefits 2 years from the date of injury. And if that person was a maximum earner or near the minimum, you might need to take a look at that and adjust TTD rates. COLA and TTD rates, here they are. I think I saw a question about why was TTD lower in 24 than 23? It wasn't. It was the same. I may have got the years mixed up. So here's what the maximum average weekly earnings and maximum TTD rates were per year. So they go up. They've been going up based on COLA. We had no increase in 2024, so there was no increase for the TTD rate. It going up for 2025, so pay attention to that. We will have our money charts available, the updated ones with the 2025 in it very soon. They'll be online. Right now, our 2024 money charts are available, and they have all of this information in it. COLA does not apply directly to death benefits. It does not. It's absolutely does not apply directly. You're not just taking death benefits and applying COLA. What can happen though is because death benefits are to be paid from the labor code in the same manner as TTD, that 2-year rule also applies. So if you're paying death benefits 2 years from the date of injury and that person was a maximum or near a minimum wage earner, it might require that you make an adjustment of that death benefit rate. And remember that there's a statutory death benefit and there's a dependent minor exception, which would allow additional benefits until that dependent minor reaches the age of 18. So you might be paying death benefits for years, and maybe you need to make adjustments every January 1st, 2 years after the date of injury. Again, it's capped based on 2/3 of that deceased worker's average weekly earnings. And here's a recent WCA panel decision, the Brzezinski versus City of Fullerton, that affirmed that a prior district court decision was appropriate. I'm sorry, it was actually a prior in-bank decision, Phillips versus Sacramento Municipal Utilities District, said that the 2-year rule applies to death benefits, but COLA does not. Just another reminder, for death benefits and for TTD, the average weekly earnings at the time of injury are relevant. So even though COLA goes up and the TTD rate goes up, which might result in a death benefit going up, it's still capped at 2/3 of the average weekly earnings at the time of injury. Death benefits, just briefly, there's a minimum amount for death benefits. If you're paying death benefits, if you have a death claim, do some research before you start paying benefits. It's got its own unique labor code regarding death benefits and how that should and when that should be paid. So make sure you do some research on that before you start getting into making payments and handling that sort of thing. Labor Code 4661.5, as a reminder, that's the 2-year rule, is often called. 2 years from the date of injury, if you're making TTD payments, death benefits are considered TTD benefits. The amount shall be in accordance with the maximum and minimums in effect on the date that you're paying them. So let me just give you an example of death benefits and how that might change. So an example, 2017 injury and death, average weekly earnings of $1,200. 2/3 of that is $800, so that would be the death benefit to start. Average weekly earnings, if it was a different individual with average weekly earnings of $2,100, 2/3 of that is $1,400. They're going to take different paths. If it was $800 based on the $1,200 a week earnings, there's no change in the death benefit. That's not ever going to change unless the minimum average weekly earnings goes above $1,200 while you're paying death benefits. That's unlikely to happen. So it's going to stay at $800. It's fixed. COLA does not apply. It's fixed at that. The second example, we're looking at a $2,100 average weekly earnings. 2/3 of that is $1,400. 2017, there's a maximum less than that person's earnings. So the max TD applies. 2 years later, the current TTD rate, 2 years after the date of injury, now applies based on the earnings of $2,100 a week, and it goes up again, and it goes up again, and it goes up again until it hits the max based on that deceased injured worker's earnings of $2,100, and then it will stay at that. So it's a brief example. We have other webinars on death benefits and how to calculate that, but just in general, again, if you've got a death benefit case, do some research, make sure you're paying it correctly. There's some unique things about death benefits payments and how you adjust those benefits. So do some research on that if you're handling one of those. Lifetime benefits, there's Supreme Court ruling, in-bank decisions, and ultimately I just want to point out it's been made clear through labor code and case law that COLA does not apply until that benefit actually starts. So it's not We're predicting that there's going to be life pension starting in 10 years. We're not calculating COLA and increasing that now. After it starts, that January 1st, after it starts is when COLA starts applying, and it applies then every January 1st. And it's been determined that's the way it is. There's in my mind, there's no additional argument available on that. That's been determined. Commutation is going to talk a little bit about that, because usually when we have a lifetime benefit case, there's an attorney involved. And when there's an attorney involved, there's usually attorney fees paid. And the way attorney fees get paid is in lump sum at the time of the settlement. And those benefits are taken out of future benefits. And that's what a commutation does, is calculate how that affects those future benefits. So if you have a case where there's permanent disability and then life pension, what you'll see is that attorney fees for the permanent disability, up to whatever percent that is, are calculated. And then there's a separate calculation for attorney fees based on projected life pension benefits for the remainder of the life of that injured worker. And so those will be commuted differently. The attorney fees for PD are going to be taken out of future PD benefits. Sometimes it's taken out of benefits that have been accrued and not paid, but most of the time it's out of future PD benefits. And so you reduce future benefits every week to cover that amount of attorney fee that was paid. Same with life pension benefits or perm total benefits. The benefit is paid for that particular, attorney fee is paid for that particular benefit, and then weekly that's calculated what to take out of that benefit going forward in order to pay for that future benefit, what's been taken out of the future benefit. And there's some interest credit included within that. And I see Kenny looks like he might have a question for me.
Yeah, some clarification on people that are between maximum and minimum earners. Someone asked if COLA only applies to max and minimum earners, or if anything goes in between.
For life pension benefits, anything in between. Yes, and yes, it applies to every lifetime benefit. Life pension, those are fixed maximums, but it applies to whatever the benefit is. Perm total is based on that specific injured worker, and whatever the maximum TTD rate was at that time would be the maximum start rate, but COLA will apply to it, whatever the rate was.
And also, then that goes with Labor Code 466.1.5 applicable to the TTD rate. That's within maximum and minimum statutory.
Correct. That's going in maximum and minimums, and it's going to cap. It's always capped based on the injured worker's earnings. 2/3 of the average weekly earnings would be the TTD rate, and that's what it's capped on. So if the person was over a max earner, it's going to increase until it gets up to whatever that max earning was, 2/3 of that max earnings for that individual.
Yeah, that should clarify things. Thank you.
So commutations, I'm going to check my time here. I still got time. It's paying benefits in advance. That's what a commutation does. It's calculating the effect of paying a benefit in advance. And that's really what you do with attorney fees. You're paying a lump sum now from future benefits for that injured worker. And then you're taking some out weekly from the future benefit to pay for that attorney fees. And there's a little bit of an interest rate credit as well. It's 3% per annum. It's built into all the DEU commutation templates. Again, I've got to talk about commutations to talk about the reductions and what you need to do in order to calculate payments going forward. If you've got life pension or perm total benefits to calculate going forward, we're going to talk a little bit about commutations. We're not going to learn how to do them, but we're going to talk about them. So the commutation templates themselves have built-in calculators that calculate the effect of that advanced payment of attorney fees and the interest credit of 3% per year. So the commutations, there's one Excel worksheet which has 7 different sheets to it, different commutation things that are done. If it's a life expectancy commutation, you need life expectancy tables. And I'm just going to scroll through again. At times, attorney fees might be paid from accrued and unpaid permanent partial disability without commutation. If someone returned to work at the same job or a qualifying job and you are not making PD advances, it's consistent with the law. And maybe there's enough accrued to pay those attorney fees. If everybody agrees, that you can pay it out of the accrued rather than giving the lump sum to the injured worker and taking attorney fees out of future benefits. One way to do that, but everybody's got to agree to it. The 2 most common commutations requested and approved are off the far end for permanent partial disability only. It can't be done on lifetime benefits. It can't, because we don't know what the far end is. It's based on life expectancies, and there's no fixed amount. PPD is a fixed time frame of benefits being paid, so you can do it off the far end. And it's what that is. It's actually is calculating that benefits going for 147 weeks. Maybe you're taking the last 15 weeks to pay attorney fees, and that's really what it's doing. It's taking it from the far end and paying it now. Since you're paying it early, you get some interest credit on it. The more common method is a uniform constant reduction. And what that does is that calculates a fixed amount, weekly amount to be deducted from that future benefit to cover the attorney fees and the interest credit. And that can be done for either a permanent partial or for a life pension or for a perm total case. There's calculators for that. The DEU does those calculations when asked, and often will do those in conjunction with hearings where there's discussion of settlement, and can do that sort of calculation. I would just tell you, with respect to a uniform reduction, there's a separate type of uniform reduction that they call the uniformly increasing reduction. Those are 2 different types of reductions, and just be cautious of what you're looking at. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So again, there'll be separate attorney fee calculations for a life pension case, one for PD and one for life pension. If it's perm total disability, 100%, it's only one benefit. That starts from MMI or end of TTD on. And so there's only one calculation then. But for PD with life pension, there's going to be 2 separate calculations, 2 separate attorney fees for each type of benefit. Again, just a reiteration of lifetime benefits. It's date of injury 1/1/2003 and later. Increased current benefits by COLA effective 1/1/2025 does not affect benefits that have not begun to accrue. Rate reduced by uniform reduction. If you're paying lifetime benefits, I'm going to show examples on that. But if you're currently paying lifetime benefits, the way you apply COLA is to increase the rate before reduction by the COLA amount and then to apply the reduction. And as I mentioned, there's a uniform reduction. It's a constant reduction. The DEU will also calculate a uniformly increasing reduction. They have a method 1 and a method 2. If you've seen a DEU commutation package, they offer both types of reductions. They're not telling you have to use one or the other. My personal recommendation is, if you have a choice, to do the uniform constant reduction, because it's just easier to administer and it just seems to make more sense. The uniformly increasing reduction is a little more challenging to administer. So I'm going to give you an example of how COLA affects payment of future benefits. This one example of 2009 date of injury, a 2020 award, 83% PD. You always need to know the PD start date. When do you start counting that? 83% for a 2009 date of injury corresponds to 641.25 weeks beginning 7/19/2012 in this date. So, based on that 641.25 weeks beginning 7/19/2012, life pensions will start November 1st, 2024 for 83% PD. The maximum life pension rate, start rate, is 177.81. And that's, again, that's maximum. And we're going to assume this person was a maximum earner. That's not always the case, but we're going to assume that on this particular example. And that's the life pension start rate. You don't start applying COLA until January 1st of 2025. Benefits, the life pension doesn't start till 2024, so 2025 is when COLA applies. In this particular example, we're going to say the attorney fees were commuted from the side. You'll hear that term sometimes or see that term sometimes in the award. What that means is by uniform reduction. So in this particular one, I'm showing you blurry pictures of an actual commutation workbook from the DEU, but hopefully it's going to get the message across. So this is the data that gets put into it. We're doing a commutation of a portion of a deferred life pension. By that, it means it hasn't started yet. It's deferred. It's not starting yet. By uniform reduction. So the data is put in here. The attorney fees specific to life pension is put in there. The rate there, and then the worksheet fills this out, and it gives you the data here on how that's going to affect future benefits. And I think I have that somewhere coming up here in a little bit. Yeah, I do. But down here, that calculation, that commutation calculation, gives you what that reduction will be. I'll talk about that more, but that's where it comes from, a commutation calculation. I want to give this reminder. Labor Code 4659 says that life pension starts after the number of weeks of PD. It doesn't say after the dollar amount. It's after the number of weeks of PD. So that I want to make that point, that the number of weeks of PD is relevant. I know we were reflexed to just look at the dollar amount, but the number of weeks is really important. It starts on the PD start date and it goes for that number of weeks. That becomes really important when we're talking about life pension following that, because the life pension, regardless of whether you made lump sum payments from the PD, the life pension should not start until that number of weeks goes by. If life pension, or if PD, the partial permanent disability, is taken from the far end, that might leave a gap. I'm not going to talk too much more about that because I don't have time, but we do have commutation webinar. Good thing to look at if you're dealing with those quite a bit. So here's what the DEU commutation sheet looks like. It tells you method 1 and it tells you method 2. The method 1 was a standard, was a uniform reduction every week for the rest of the duration of that lifetime benefit. Method 2 is uniformly increasing. How that is calculated, it gives us lesser reduction initially, and that's calculated to go up every year. So it starts off as a lower reduction. It goes up, turns out to be 3% a year. So what the DEU does is calculate an increase in that reduction of 3% every year. So it starts much lower, but goes up 3% a year forever, for as long as you're paying that benefit. That reduction goes up. COLA will apply to the rate before reduction. The reduction itself on the uniformly increasing reduction is built in to go up at 3%. And it's, by built in, I mean the math is built in. You need to do it. You need to do the application with your payments, but it's a 3% increase every year on the reduction, separate from COLA applying to the rate before reduction. So I'm going to skip a couple here. I want to show you, here's what method 1 on that same example was. It's a $39.14 reduction every week for uniform reduction from the life pension. So the benefit starts at $138.67. So the $177.81 is the rate before reduction. The $39.14 is the reduction, and the rate after reduction is $138.67. And I'm saying that very specifically, the rate before reduction, that's a term that the DEU uses, and it means something because that's what you'll apply COLA to. This is the reduction, and this is the rate after reduction. And the uniformly increasing reduction, I just talked about that. Instead of starting at $39.14 a week, in this case, started at $26.67 and goes up 3% a year. So it's going to be a while before it catches up to the $39.14 in this case. And I want to emphasize that the commutations and the reductions are each unique to that case with the data that's used for that case, which includes the PD start date, the amount of the attorney fees, and other things. So these are unique to each individual case. This is not a $39.14 uniform reduction that you're going to take on every 83% PD. This is specific to this case from this calculator. I hope that makes sense. I had that question come to me once that this is unique. These values are unique to this case and that calculator with the data that was specifically input into that commutation calculator. I would recommend that if you are taking over a case with life pension on it or from total benefits, take a look at the award. Check the specifics regarding the commutation, the reduction, and whether it's a uniform reduction, constant reduction, or uniformly increasing reduction. Check the award if you're taking over a case newly, and make sure what that award really says, and you're going on that. Older awards might have a 4% annual increase, but over the last few years, the standard increase, if it's an increasing reduction, is 3% per year, regardless of COLA. That's the increase on the reduction. That's not the increase on the actual life pension benefit before reduction. So let me show you how that works. Here's really the nitty-gritty what I want to show you how to do. COLA application. You're handling a life pension case. 2024 life pension started at $177.81 a week minus $39.14 for a uniform constant reduction. So in 2024, you're paying $138.67 to that injured worker. 2025 comes along and COLA is 3.77588%. What that tells us we need to do is we need to increase that $177.81 by that COLA amount, the 3.77588%. I find the math easier for me to do 1.0377588 times the rate, gives you the rate before reduction, the increase. 1.0377588 is 103.77588%. So the increase, the 177.81 goes up to 184.54. That 39.14 stays the same, subtracted from that new rate before reduction. So the amount to the injured worker will be 145.38. I'm going to stop a moment and see if there's questions on that. This is the crux of how you apply COLA. This is it. You apply COLA to the rate before reduction and subtract the reduction. We don't apply COLA to this 138.67, the rate after reduction from the prior year. We apply it to the rate before reduction and then take the reduction. For 2026, we're going to apply whatever COLA may be to 184.52 and then subtract the constant reduction of 39.14. The COLA is not subject to the maximum average weekly wage. It is not. Whatever that PD or life pension start rate is, COLA applies regardless of anything else. Doesn't matter but make sure you get the correct start rate for life pension. The maximum average, there's a unique formula for calculating life pension. So if you are doing a calculation of what the life pension benefit should be, the initial rate, check. We have that calculation or that formula on our dollar charts. Look for that. Make sure you're doing it correctly. If a person is making less than 515.38, they're not going to get 177.81 as a start rate for the 80, whatever this was, 83% PD. If they're perm total, you calculate it. It's the TTD rate is what perm total starts at. Whatever the TTD rate is what perm total starts at. And that you don't do the 2-year rule to TTD to start a perm total. If you paid TD for 4 years and the TTD rate went up for PTD, you go back to the TTD rate, the initial rate, and you start there, and COLA applies to that. So hopefully I made that clear. I got a couple more examples of doing the same type of thing, so I want to go through that. So here we go. That's this again. This is it. This is how we apply COLA. Just be sure you're applying COLA to the rate before reduction, not after reduction. Okay. So we're taking it, and this, I think this slide shows it better. We're applying it to the 177.81. For 2026, COLA will be applied to the 184.52, and then you subtract the 39.14. That 39.14, in this case, for a uniform reduction, remains for the duration of your payments of lifetime benefits, of life pension benefits to this individual for this particular case. And I can't emphasize enough, these reductions are unique to each case, based on the commutation calculation, and there are factors such as the amount of the attorney fees, which is based on present value. So the date that it's calculated, the date that PD starts changes it, the age of the injured worker, so the date of birth is calculated, and there's life expectancy calculations built into the DEU calculators. So the data that you put in is going to be unique for each individual. And so the reduction that is calculated is going to be unique for each individual in each individual case. So projecting out a little farther on the application of COLA to life pension, we went through 2025, 2026. It's whatever this 180, we don't know, the 184.52 is going to be increased by whatever the COLA is. The 39.14 stays the same. This is the uniform reduction. So the COLA is always applied to the rate before reduction. If you have one of those cases, and they are rare, but double check your award that you're doing a uniformly increasing reduction, make sure you check that award. Because what happens in that case is you apply COLA to the rate before reduction, you also increase the reduction, and it's built in, it's calculated for you. And in this case, it was 3% every year. What was unusual was last year when we had a zero COLA, we did not increase. If you had a case that had a uniformly increasing reduction, the reduction still went up. So in that case, the individual would have received a slightly lower benefit check because the reduction went up, although that the rate before reduction did not. So anytime you get a zero COLA, if you have this type of a reduction calculated, that reduction continues to increase at 3%. Again, this should be very rare. Hopefully you don't have any like this, but double check your award to make sure that you do not. PTD Awards. Often, I gotta get hurry in here. Often perm total, we don't know. We usually don't know that it's going to be a perm total case until we get towards a finding, an award. So what happens then is might have to calculate retroactive PTD. And it's not that we're calculating retroactive, it's that PTD is found to have started earlier than we ever expected, because we didn't expect it was going to start at all. So I'm giving you this example, a DEO calculation in 2021, 2021 award says that, you know what, this person was PTD and it started in 2016. So now you got to go back and calculate what the COLA effect was for 2017, 2018, and so on, because PTD would have started in this case back in 2016. So you got to go back and you got to apply the COLA and show what those calculations are. So here's with these COLA amounts, here's how that would have increased while we were not paying perm total benefits. So that's accrued. We unexpectedly got a perm total award. Maybe you paid PD at $290 a week. You can subtract what you've paid from what the award ends up, but you've got to go back and retroactively calculate what PTD was. And then if the attorney fees will not be paid until after the award, so at some point, then you're going to start having a reduction. But again, COLA would apply here retroactively only because perm total disability was awarded retroactively. We hadn't been paying it. So it would have been accruing if based on the fact that PD was found back at that time. I am towards the end of it here. I'm going to do this: fixed benefits, commutations, PPD of 1 to 99%. Those are fixed benefits based on the number of weeks, and we have those in our money charts. Lifetime benefits for a PD of 70% or greater. 70 to 99 pays a life pension. 100% is perm total disability. So there's no partial disability. It begins at MMI or TTDN, whichever comes first, and perm total is paid on that. So that's what I have in regard for this. Commutation, again, we have stuff on commutations. We have webinars specific to that if you want to look on our website and find that if you need that information. Kenny, do we have additional questions that I have not addressed?
Sure, just there's a question from Stephen Snell. I deal with many workers that earnings are below the TTD minimum. They are currently assigned the TTD minimum rate on those claimants that injuries are more than 2 years old. Would all those people be bumped up to the 2025 minimum TTD rate?
Yes, with the I'm speculating those are seasonal workers, and there's some different things that apply to seasonal workers. So without knowing specifics, I'm not sure my blanket answer is going to be accurate for that. If they're getting TTD minimum rates, I guess I don't know enough to give you a firm answer on that, but there are minimum TTD rates. Yeah, there are minimum PT rates. So if you're paying benefits on a minimum TTD rate 2 years from date of injury, then yes, those would be bumped up.
Okay. And then we have another question from Lisa. After the attorney fee is paid in full by reduction, do we stop deducting into the biweekly payment?
No, no, there was no, you don't stop, because that calculation of attorney fees is based on present value, which is not fixed. You can't really tell what it is. And there's an inherent risk in calculation of attorney fees, whether you're going to overpay or underpay. And for the same reason that we don't ask the attorney to give money back if an injured worker dies before the life expectancy, we don't stop deducting if the injured worker lives beyond life expectancy.
Okay. Cool. And we have a few more I suppose we can get to.
Sure.
Does the 2-year rule apply to PTD benefits, or does COLA apply after January 1st of the first year after PTD benefits began?
Yeah, the 2-year rule does not apply to PTD. COLA does.
Okay. There's a question from Kimberly Look. What if you didn't reduce it? Can you take credit if you
didn't reduce, I'm not sure I understand, reduce the for attorney fees?
Yeah, paid by reductions.
Yeah, you'll need to work with applicant counsel on what they're gonna agree to. That becomes tricky. And I wouldn't just unilaterally change it without discussing it so somebody knows what you're doing and agrees with you or doesn't agree with you, you know up front.
I think we are about out of time here. Are we good to go? Okay. Thank you so very much, Kenny and Tim. And thank you all for the fantastic questions. You guys are awesome. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your December. I hope you have a wonderful holiday and a happy new year. Thank you so much for joining us this year. We appreciate each and every one of you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.